Now, one of the things that happened at that first meeting was Molly's admission, I mean, through some prodding questions of mine, was Molly's admission that much of what's in the book isn't true.
In what's said or what's not said?
Both. For instance, what you just read. Molly, at the beginning of the book, she talks about her parents for a few pages. She tells us that her father drove the three kids, she and her two younger brothers, very hard, that academics and athletics were very important. She gives an example of the father driving them hard, but she just makes it sound like, thank God my father drove us hard because it made us strong, and he was a great, strong dad. There was another side to that, a much darker, much more emotional side to that, that she did not write in the book, because why? That she was writing this book for one reason only, not because she wanted to finally tell the story, get this off her chest or anything. She needed to start climbing out of the terrible hole that she was in. She was and remains a couple of $1 million in debt, with no source of income, with one thing on her resume. She ran poker games for 10 years, and as a result was pled guilty in federal court as part of a mob indictment. It's not like people are swinging their doors open to hire Molly Bloom and I'll be able to pay this off in an instant. Still, as the movie dramatizes, she could have written a book that paid off that debt instantly, simply by telling the stories that she began to tell me over the course of those hundreds of meetings that aren't in the book, and didn't. She wrote the book that her publisher, HarperCollins, wanted her to write, which would be a book that would have a lot of makeover scenes in it, and stories about her boyfriends and that kind of thing. Nothing like a movie that you just saw. And that is what she wrote for basically the minimum option payment that you can get. So I want to be clear. And then I want to stop being this personal about somebody else's family. Molly, I was wrong. I believe those sentiments are true. Molly loves her father very, very much, and particularly lately, and frankly, at least partly as a result of this film, they have, the two of them and the whole family have really come together. But there is, underneath that quote, there's a bigger story.
Was that the movie that you said you had to make? Because the book is about poker, and it's about her relationship to the players in the game, and your movie is about a father and his daughter, and a lawyer and his client, and it's really not about the game, it's about the people behind the game, and it's about what Molly is going through as she's playing the game, which is very different from the book.
That's right. And I'm very happy that you're pointing these things out. It's because it is what lit me up and instantly got me so excited about the idea of writing this. It was a very vague, very general idea, but it was after that one-hour meeting that I left there knowing that the thing that I had agreed to write right now, I was no longer going to write, and that it was going to be this. And one of the reasons was, yes, her book is about celebrity poker games. Just as we say in the movie, when she finished the book, she hadn't yet been arrested. Okay, so the Russian mob isn't anywhere in this book, which is a big deal. It's what it is the motor behind the movie. Is she gonna have to go to jail? But it was what I said to Molly was this after our second or third meeting, because by the time we met, people had already been approaching Molly about buying her life rights. They wanted to turn her story into a cable TV series about, this hot woman and her hot friends who run celebrity poker games with presumably hot men. Nice hotness. people whose names I knew, whose work I knew, whose names you know, and whose work you know, had also approached Molly. What I said to Molly after the third meeting is, listen, I think you wrote a really good story that left breadcrumbs to a better story. And I want to tell them both. I want to tell both the story of how you came 100 yards from going to Harvard Law School with an Olympic medal around your neck and then starting a foundation that would seed entrepreneurial women. And you came 100 yards from that before tripping over a stick. How you went from that to running underground high-stakes poker games. But I also want to tell the story of right now, and you're needing to stay out of jail. Basically, what Charlie is the only fictional character in the story. Okay, right. Molly did have a criminal defense lawyer. Men I've never met or spoken to. I knew I was going to eliminate that guy and create a character that I needed to tell a certain story. Charlie's journey from I have no respect for you at all to I'm cool that you're my daughter's role model. Okay? And so I tried as best as I could to describe to Molly the movie that I wanted to write. I had a terribly difficult time describing it. It was just a feeling that I had. But what I told her was, I don't think this is a poker movie. I don't think this is a movie where we ever care who wins or loses a hand of poker. Okay? That poker is going to exist because Molly is looking at it. And in fact, we should never see anything that Molly doesn't see. And in fact, Molly should be the one telling this story, not the filmmakers. It should be like the best TED Talk you've ever seen. And Molly, your relationship with your father is not irrelevant in this story at all. Are you out of your mind? And especially when you tell me that you think the reason you ended up running poker games was because you got addicted to controlling powerful men because of your father. That all of this should be in there. And I told her point blank, I think that the stories that other people want to tell will probably make you more money. But I am dying to tell this story, which I think is a more emotional story, and it is a story in which you are a genuine movie heroine. And that's what I saw her as, that level of character and integrity. Is, to me, that's ringing the dinner bell.
She never saw it until it was finished.
She did not see it. It was a very emotional night. She saw it. Obviously, we offered her the chance to, I'd set up a private screening room. She could see it by herself. Her father could see it by himself. The family could watch it together, whatever she wanted. And she decided, the whole family decided, that they wanted to come to the Toronto Film Festival and watch it sitting right in the middle of an audience for the first time, just as moviegoers. So I said, sure, whatever you like. It wasn't that easy because
was she able to travel?
She's not allowed in Canada. Yeah, if you plead guilty, if you found guilty of a federal crime, you're not allowed in Canada. So I hired a lawyer in Toronto, an immigration lawyer, who was able to get Molly a 48-hour pass. Molly robbed the bank while she was there. She did manage to make it in and out of Canada without committing any crimes. And I was grateful for that. But she and her father and her mother and her brothers are fantastic supporters of the film and feel very emotional.
But what that means for Idris is that Idris is playing this composite character who is also in some ways Aaron Sorkin. I mean, he is, I mean that he is asking questions of the character in the film that you as the screenwriter want to have answered. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'm gonna let
Idris and Jessica are...
Yeah, no.
I'm going to let Idris speak in a second, but he was... And by the way, we learned out in the lobby, he prefers to be called Idris.
You promised you wouldn't say that.
I actually promised just the opposite. I said I'm going to say that once we get here. And I want to respect Idris. That's what we call him. Of course he wasn't playing me. He was playing this character that I'd written in there, but absolutely he was, these questions that I was asking Molly, and the answers that I was getting, I wanted to weave them into the fabric of this story, and so I created this character. You can't ask an actor just to play a delivery system, right, an empty vessel. So I made him a full character, gave him a daughter. Now, now we're in business. Molly gets to see this. She gets to see a father who's kind of hard on his daughter, right? Makes her do extra work. And Charlie gets to have a hero's journey just like Molly.
Charlie, your turn.
Hi everyone. I think I had the ultimate Aaron Sorkin experience. Getting to say his words, getting his beautiful direction, and playing him as well. It was incredible. It was an all-round experience. But Aaron is very sort of transparent about the device of Charlie in the film, who is definitely a fictitious character, and you can tell essentially the Charlie character is the spine within the film from which the film is attached to, going back and forth, and that was very much we discussed that in the beginning of our meetings, which was great. And Jessica and I didn't have much chance to sort of talk about that before we started working. We had a sort of a bottleneck schedule, and we shot all of those scenes, within sort of 10 days. But what was great about, actually, what was really interesting was that although I have a lot of respect for Jessica and we've met before, we didn't know each other very well. And, we weren't sure what was going to happen on a film set. Actors who admire each other from afar, sort of, it could go either of two ways. But what was great was that Idris and Jessica got to know each other, while doing 10-page scenes for Aaron Sorkin within 10 days, while Charlie and Molly Bloom got to know each other. And that was, I think, sort of a happy accident, if I'm honest, right? The way that happened for us. But yeah, essentially, I had an amazing time doing it. Thank you, Aaron, honestly.
Jessica, in the book and in the film, there are choices that Molly makes and choices that you make in depicting her and the way in which Aaron writes her, and that's the difference between being strong versus being tough. And I'm wondering if that was part of the conversation about how Molly would show her strength and what strength meant to her and how it was going to be shown to the men around her, because she was a woman in a man's world. What did you and Aaron talk about in terms of her strength and where she got her strength and how she needed to show her strength?
We didn't necessarily talk about Molly's strength as something we needed to create or show, because I believe women are inherently strong. And especially Molly is. That was the most helpful thing for me, is Aaron introduced me to Molly. And I also had, unfortunately, I judged her by images that the media had put forth, and I saw some interviews and a journalist wasn't necessarily being very nice to her, and I thought, okay, I have an idea who this woman is. And then I sat and talked to her and I realized, whoa, there's so much behind the curtain of what I thought. And what was being presented to me had been created by her trying to find success. She was working in an industry where she had to change everything about herself to become visible in some way. She had to change the way she looked for people to acknowledge her, to see her as a presence in this room. And that's so interesting to me when talking about gender, when talking about society, when talking about what women have to do to find some sense of success in an industry dominated by men. I mean, there's a line in this film that Aaron wrote where she says, the unfair whims of men, the rules would change. And I just have to acknowledge, I've only been in this industry for 6 years. I've been on the outside for, a long time before that. And I'm always waiting for these films with female protagonists that discuss these issues. And Aaron Sorkin, who he is, For his directorial debut, could have made any film he wanted, and he made this film about this woman's journey, which to me is so important, and I'm so grateful to be a part of it.
Josh and Alan, there's a rhythm to Aaron's writing, and there's a rhythm to the games in which we're looking at that is very percussive. And I'm wondering, as you're putting together the footage that was shot by Charlotte, is that right? You're a great cinematographer. What were the ideas that you had in terms of matching your editing rhythm to the rhythm of the dialogue? Did you try to work with it, against it? How did you find yourselves coming to Aaron with what you were going to do with the footage and the dialogue that he was giving you?
I think Aaron was pretty open to letting us present what we wanted to him and have him react. I think that was one of the amazing things is we were passionate. We were kind of emboldened to try things, to take risks. Like unlike anything else I've actually worked on, he was open to things. He pulled back. We'd only win like 30% of the time. But you said it's about rhythm. It was completely about finding rhythm. Once we had the rhythm in the dialogue scenes, particularly with Idris and with Jessica, that was easy. The trickier part was the voiceover, I think.
Yeah, and the rhythm that was in the script is what we followed. That's how we found our pattern and our style of editing. We went with the pace that was given on the page, which Aaron writes with overlaps, and obviously actors, Jessica and Idris did an amazing job in their scenes of just going one after another, line by line, and we would find those moments and those beats and just keep accelerating them to the point that Aaron would sometimes even say, go more, go further. But it also did, as Josh said, opened up opportunities to us with the stock footage to illustrate things in quick pops and bursts that would suit the style and sort of give another layer to the dialogue as well.
Let me say that, because I haven't talked about it yet, that along with Charlotte Christensen, our DP, that Josh and Alan are co-authors of this film. That they're absolutely it was just a matter of this or it was just a matter of that is charming humility on their part. I have to tell you, there is nothing greater than going into the editing room in the morning and having one or both of them say, listen, I tried something, you may think it's crazy, but take a look at it. Sometimes it is crazy, but sometimes, especially with them, it elevates not just the moment, not just the scene, the entire film to a new level. And they did that many times, and that's why I say they're co-authors of the film. I would also like to just quickly go back to your very first question. These are why the scripts are 187 pages. Getting a glimpse now of how that happens. Because I said, what I said was, I made a general statement that a lot of what's in the book isn't true. Okay, that's way too broad. Molly, the untruths, they were lies of omission, okay? Things that they didn't put in there, or things like poor people bagels, okay? And then she would later get around to saying, that's not what he said. He said this, and I would say, God, Molly, this guy was terrible to you. Why are you helping him out here by saying poor people bagels? She doesn't have it in her to tattle. She just doesn't. I mean, she's got a lot more in her than that. But to address now your fourth question, you asked Jessica, how do you play toughness?
Toughness is wrong.
Yeah, and Jessica rightly said, you don't play that. You show up with it. And the thing is, not everyone in the world can show up with it. It's one of the 900 reasons you cast Jessica Chastain, because it's actors can't act, act tough. They can't act strong. Yeah.
At great risk, I'm going to ask you a multi-part question. But I'll try to make it concise. You have worked with some amazing directors, Danny Boyle, David Fincher, Bennett Miller, Tom Schlamme. And I'm wondering, as you're thinking about what your directing style is, if there's people, directors you work with, that you're pulling from or influenced by, and as you're coming together with that style, why this was the right film for you to direct the first time.
Okay, I really am going to try to do this as quickly and coherently as possible. I'll take your second question first. I did not decide, I was writing this movie. I didn't know that I was going to direct it until after I wrote it, when the producers came to me and said, we think you should direct it, and a discussion began. And by the way, one of the things that I wanted to be sure of was, as we say, that I could cast the movie. In other words, would Jessica Chastain and Idris Elba be willing to work with me? If they're not, somebody else needs to direct this movie, because it's more important that Jessica Chastain and Idris Elba be in it than I be directing it. I'm fine standing next to the director and saying everything you're doing is bad. I can say that and then go get a donut. Okay. It's a fantastic job. But the fact is that if you spend a lot of time standing next to Mike Nichols and Danny Boyle and David Fincher and Bennett Miller and Tommy, as you said, a lot of it is bound to rub off on you. As for my directing style, right now my directing style is to surround myself with very talented people and say yes to their good ideas. And I mean that. I don't want people who will just follow my instructions. I want people who have better ideas than my instructions from time to time, and will say so, so that, I mean, that's how you get the best movie you can get. If everybody's sort of trying to make the same movie, you know?
Jessica and Idris, I'm going to ask you this question. Danny Boyle, when he was making the movie 127 Hours, would have these fights with Aaron Ralston about like whether the car turned left or turned right when it was parking. And Danny said to Aaron Ralston, just because something isn't factual doesn't mean it's not truthful. Which is a great line, but Jessica and Idris, when you're talking about the truth of this film, you're going to make factual changes. Idris, you're a composite character. When you're talking with Aaron, when you're talking about the film, what is the truth of the film that you're trying to get at? What did you keep coming back to in terms of the story that was important, even if you're changing facts here and there?
For me, when I'm playing a real character, I do as much research as I can to understand what was the inner life of the character. I also talk to people that knows the character, because sometimes another person's reaction or interpretation is interesting to hear as well. But also, making a movie is making it on a bigger scale. So I also look at the world and society, and what are these themes that I'm seeing in this hero's journey, and what can I help illuminate? So a lot for this film, I was really interested in the idea of Molly giving so much of herself away to try and be acknowledged and accepted into this club that wouldn't let her in. Until the end, when she says, no, I know this is my name, this is who I am, I'm not playing by these unfair rules anymore. And that to me was a way to take this one person's journey and make it every woman's journey. And so that's how I kind of expand on the factual.
Great answer. Idris?
I was just trying to get through the dialogue. That's
And you had, by the way, you had how much rehearsal time for this film?
We had none.
Zero.
You know, I guess when Aaron Sorkin calls you and says, I want to work with you on a film, you know, that is a sort of a real pinnacle moment in probably any actor's career. And I walked in, even, again, I say we had a bottleneck in terms of how we shot this. It was designed to be very quick, but I had to walk in there with the trust that you do have in the words. You know, the character, interestingly enough, there is some sort of duality to me in some degree. You know, I have a daughter, she's 15, she talks shit to me all the time, and I love it. But you know, through my daughter, there are some real observations about myself. I know that, I can accept that, and actually it was a really interesting way for me to hook into Charlie's energy, was to sort of relate that relationship. Because very much so, I think Stella, the character, was very much a fulcrum for Charlie to see what he couldn't see in the beginning. And yeah, I just, you know, it was therapy for me actually to play this part to some degree because of the journey of Charlie. It's a bit therapeutic like that.
We have time for a couple of quick audience questions, but I'm going to ask a question that is probably on everybody's mind. The book names names, and it doesn't name all the names, but it certainly names the names that are in a key deposition when Brad, who loses his money, gets deposed, and he names names, and those names are in the book, and you kind of reference that. But you make a decision, as a screenwriter, as a filmmaker, to not name the names that are named in the book. Why?
Of course, because for two reasons. One, it wouldn't be something I'd want to do anyway. I don't like gossip, so it wouldn't have been nice. It just wouldn't be something I'd do. The second reason is that if you're gonna make a movie where your hero is a hero, because she won't name names, the movie can't name names. Okay, you can't have it both ways. I knew this was gonna be a thing I was gonna have to conquer in writing the script. What do I do about the movie star element? Do I pixelate their faces as if, they wouldn't sign a release in the movie, or do I shoot them from behind, or you just see their hand, or something like that? And I even felt all that was a little coy, and what I settled on was the idea of Player X, and Molly is very clear in her TED Talk to us that, look, I'm not going to name the names, but you have to know, to understand this story, that there were powerful movie stars at the game. So we're going to call this one guy Player X. He's an amalgam of all the movie stars at the game. I was careful not to give Player X any of the Googleable qualities attached to the players that Molly references when she says I threw 4 guys under the bus for $35,000. That's the closest she comes to kind of bumping up against the real.
So questions, we make them short so we can get to maybe 4 or 5. Stand up and be loud. Go ahead, right here. Yep.
Hi, I have 2 questions for Josh and Alan. Thank you so much for reading your opinions. This film was amazing. How is it editing and where? Usually editing is like a solo endeavor with the director and everyone else. How is it editing together?
Everybody back here?
Yeah.
Good. Editing as a pair. Go.
It's becoming fairly common. I've done it a few times, and in this case, it was just a dream. I mean, we had a tight schedule. It was partly based on that. There's a lot of work to do to get through, and Josh and I just worked beautifully together, seamlessly passing things back and forth. We stuck to our own sections, but then traded ideas and had a lot of fun. Something that I wanted to mention is the fun, and that goes back to what Aaron said, where he welcomed us to challenge him, offer ideas, and it just made the environment that we were working in a lot of fun. We were excited to come to work. We were excited about the material. It was a challenge for us, and Josh and I just
This is like the definition of why you have more than one, actually, for me, because it's different people with different perspectives. Because we actually complemented. The best of what we did is in the movie, like in as we see it. That's I have no hesitation in saying that. No, that's fantastic.
Question toward the back. Who's got a hand toward the way back? Okay, over there on the aisle. Stand up and be loud.
I was so impressed by this film. To have a woman character so powerful, starts off as just as kind of a mess because of what happened. Then she's an anti-hero. At the very end, it's like kind of a dizzy. I think not really, but it was just the way. When I found out, I didn't even know that I didn't know anything about the book, and I'm fascinated by the movie. I hope it does extremely well. It should. I also am wondering, what is Molly planning to do, or does she have any idea? Anybody know what's
Jessica, do you know? Yeah, what's Molly up to now? Jessica?
She's back in school, I think.
She's gonna go to law school. Yeah, and thank you very much for coming.
Practice the law though, because if you know, because she can't.
I'm sorry?
Can she?
Yes, she can. There are 3 states in which she can't be admitted to the bar, but they are Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alaska. So she'll take those odds.
Okay, down here, we'll get to 3 more.
I didn't know anything about poker. I did what Molly does in the film. I just started Googling everything. Molly doesn't play poker in real life. She doesn't, it's a risk she doesn't want to do. She knows a lot about it, so I needed to make sure I knew a lot about it. And actually, I met with some guys who played in Molly's game, and they took me to a New York game. And I sat there for 4 hours and watched a lot of money get lost. So there's no risk that I will ever play poker in my future.
Idris, what
I play in games regularly, but I just can't talk about it.
Oh, you're actor X, I get it. Very clever casting. Down here.
Really enjoyed it. My question is, Aaron, you said that you wrote the screenplay you were going to direct it. Would it have been different if you start when you were directed?
Do you ever hear the question?
You know,
Would it have been a different screenplay?
Well,
if
yeah,
you
if
was
I
gonna
had
direct
from the
it?
beginning that I was going to direct it, would it have been a different screenplay? And it's funny, not only haven't I ever been asked that question, I've never even thought about that question until 15 seconds ago. And since you mention it, I am so grateful that I didn't know that, seriously, that I was going to direct it, because I'm sure if I had, I would have been writing scenes so carefully that for instance, I'm very proud of the opening sequence of the movie. The way we start with this skiing, it moves very fast. Has nothing to do with poker, as Molly tells us at the end. And we also think that that is a prologue that we're not going to return to. That was just kind of a fun way opening number for the movie. And it turns out that it's also the climax of the movie coming back there. If I'd known I was going to direct it, I would never have written a scene where people ski and crash and up in the air. That first 8 minutes of the movie has more action than everything I've ever written combined. I'm like people talking in rooms. I'm really glad you asked that question. Listen, I haven't suddenly become a director. I love working with great directors, and I want to keep on working with great directors. But I did have a great time doing this. I'm very proud of what we did together, so I want to direct again. But what I don't ever want to do is know that I'm directing. I really appreciate you pointing that out. Yes, go ahead.
I think that you've given such an incredible, priceless gift to Molly by sharing your private conversations with her in a character and a whole movie. You've changed millions of people's perception of her. But actually, I didn't see that. I mean, I saw that there were writing references in their conversations, but what I saw was her relationship with her father, the love you had for her, and what I know the love you have for your daughter, the public love you showed her in thank you speeches and stuff. So I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit more about maybe the loving, complicated part, the father's relationship with mom.
Sure. I think, as you pointed out, I do have a daughter, and the moment she was born, there's one thing I've been certain of, that the easiest thing in the world to do is for one father to empathize with another father. Okay? It's a terrible thing happened in Texas today, right? And when anything like that happens, I immediately go to, did a child lose a parent lose a child, it's just what I'm thinking of, and it's kind of unbearable for me. Again, it's very easy for any father to empathize with any other father. I would imagine the same thing is true with mothers. So it wasn't hard for me to write Molly's father, to write Kevin's character with some empathy, in spite of everything that went on. And in spite of the fact that it's not what I would do, it's not the way I behave. I was able to not judge him, and I was also, what a relief to get to that park bench in Central Park, where he could tell her how much he loves her, and also kind of confess to his sins. And a scene that you think is going to be about a father coming along and making everything all right for his daughter ends with this man. Remember Kevin Costner, okay, who's sort of forgive me, Idris, but the manly man of movies for the last few decades. With the father collapsing into his daughter's arms and her having to say, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I mean, to say I enjoyed writing the whole thing. It was tricky, but I think being a father myself helped a lot in being able to write that character without judging the character harshly.
I want to ask the last question. You've made movies about Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, and Billy Beane. What could they learn from somebody like Molly?
Well, I think anybody could learn a lot from Molly. I did. I have. Those are three very different people you just named. And I don't want to besmirch them. They all make great guys. But again, I like, it's come up twice now on this panel, and I just hadn't thought of it in these terms. I like that Molly is strong and not tough. Toughness, I mean, not to parse it too much, but toughness always sounds to me like an affectation that people have to put on who aren't strong. And Molly is. And I believe what the skiing commentators say at the end of the movie, she'll be back, she'll be back. Do not count this woman out, okay? She will be back.
Idris, Jessica, Alan, Josh, Aaron, thank you guys.